The weekly Industry Angel podcast hears from business leaders and entrepreneurs who share their stories and that all-important light bulb moment. This can inspire us all and maybe scratch that itch and kickstart that idea that keeps you awake at night. Welcome to episode 29 of the Industry Angel. Ian Farrer here once again, bringing you the biggest and the most diverse business podcast on terra firma. Right, we're straight into it this week. As you know, you shaped the show, and the most downloaded episode by a country mile was from an adventurer, episode 14. With that in mind, I now bring you one of the world's wildest adventurers. We're going to be seeing this guy go on to huge things, and we have a chance to help him along the way. Listen on. Today we have the world record holding British adventurer Ash Dykes. Welcome to the Industry Angel, Ash.
Hey Ian, thanks for having me.
Not a problem, I'm excited to speak to you. Now Ash, out of all these accolades, I'm gonna name a few, okay?
Yes.
So you've been to Downing Street a couple of times. FHM said you're one of the most fearless outdoorsmen. You're a Muay Thai fighter, master scuba diver, couple of world records under your belt. But Wales Online said you're the 7th coolest person in Wales. Those other 6 must be rock stars, Ash, eh?
yeah, that was quite a funny one to see pop up on my news feed on Facebook whilst I was actually traversing Madagascar, and I was just like, hey, that's cool.
Did that give you a little bit motivation there?
It did actually, yeah, it certainly did.
So is that where you're from, Ash? Are you a Wales lad or?
I am, yes. I'm based in North Wales.
So what was it like growing up in North Wales, Ash? I mean, you started adventuring at a pretty young age, yeah?
I did, yeah. I've always wanted to try and push myself and challenge myself. But to be honest, in school, it was mainly with the sports, with the athletics, with long distance running. When I was younger, I probably didn't really like camping as much in Wales because it's always raining here. But I sort of adapted to that, and then I started to like going on adventures, which also challenge yourself, and that's how it kind of influenced me as a young age, really.
Sure. So when you left school, was that it? You were gone, or?
Yeah. Well, when I left school, I went straight on to college to study a BTEC National Diploma in Outdoor Education instead of sixth form. And pretty much after that college course, I realised that I learned far more through experience. And I just wanted to get out and travel. Of course, it was a lot easier said than done because I was only 16 at the time and needed to figure out how to save the money to make it happen.
Sure. Yeah, that's really good that, from a young age you knew what you wanted to do, because I know I speak to a lot of students now and some of them leave school and they just literally have no idea. But obviously you went straight into that BTEC course knowing exactly that's what you wanted to do, yeah?
Yeah, but I went into the BTEC. I didn't know what I wanted to do after the course. Yeah. I remember in between year 1 and year 2 of that course, all the rest of the students pretty much had it figured out. And I was left confused. I was like, oh no, well, I don't want to go to university because personally I didn't think that was for me. I didn't want to join the forces. And again, the BTEC just really made me realize that I learned far more through experience. And I just wanted to go out traveling, see where I'm at. But it was only about a month and a half into traveling that I took on my first big adventure. And that was the catalyst pretty much.
Come on, then what was that? There you go. That's a good segue, Ash.
Yeah, that was, well, we were traveling around China, me and my friend, we were both 19, and we realized, we're very much on the beaten track. We share the same photos, stories and experiences as all the rest of the tourists traveling around. So we hopped further down south to Cambodia. And I remember sulking on the Mekong riverbank, me and my friend saying, well, we spent way more money than anticipated. And we want to take on an adventure. We thought it'd be more wild and adventurous. So I suggested, how about we purchase the cheapest and nastiest bicycles we can find and cycle Cambodia and the length of Vietnam. We started laughing about it, and we were really on a shoestring budget. And so we went ahead, we bought 2 bicycles costing no more than £10. They had no gears. they had no gears, no suspension. They had a little pink bell and a basket on the front.
Nice.
we found string on the side of the road that we used to strap our rucksack on the back of the bicycle rack with. The locals thought we were mad, they said it's not
Yeah.
possible and that we need a guide to cross the border, and said that the bikes wouldn't make it. But we spent about a minute or 2 minutes maximum on Google, no map, no pump, no puncture repair kit. And off we went. It was quite a reckless and dangerous cycle. We were chased by dogs, we were hit by mopeds, we were dodged by lorries. It was over 1,000 miles. I think the last day we cycled over 39 hours straight, in which we were exhausted by when we reached our destination. And we were turned down 7 times by different hostels and guest houses because we looked an absolute mess. So it was it was a hell of an experience. And after that, that's when I was hooked. We went against what the locals said. We'd really pushed and challenged ourselves. We came across incredible things on our journey across Vietnam. And I wanted to keep it going. So I just didn't stop from there.
Wow. But in terms of stopping, did you come home though? At least stop for a little bit and see your parents and things?
Yeah, well, after that cycle, I went over to Thailand. I then crossed through the jungle to Burma, just trekking through the jungle over the hills. There was no permit to be purchased. There was no border control, so we went straight through the jungle, crossed the border, and learned how to survive in the jungle with a Burmese hill tribe, which was again amazing. From sourcing berries that act as a mosquito repellent to building bamboo shelters to hunting to gathering. It was an incredible time. We stayed in Southeast Asia for a little while. We then hopped over to Australia, and we had a once-in-a-lifetime 12-month visa, and that pretty much went to waste. We only lasted 3 months in Australia. We were doing some fruit picking. We were doing some crazy adventures. Again, down south, we purchased, again, the cheapest, nastiest bike you can get for $50. This one was a women's mountain bike. Yeah, and we cycled along the Great Ocean Road. I remember doing a hitchhiking in the north of Australia because our car broke down in a wild place. It took us 13 hours before we saw our next car, in which he said he's not leaving us out there. Jump in, I'll move you on. But we only lasted 3 months in Australia because we missed, the food of Asia, the culture, the locals, the lack of health and safety, especially. And so we went back, but we went to India and started doing some treks in the Himalayas. But of course, we had no money for the permit, so we just risked it. In fact, we couldn't afford a permit, but we were taught how to pray. If the Pakistan army saw us, because we were right up north on the border of Pakistan. So again, another risky one, but for sure another adventure.
So no permit. So what you're saying, if they found you didn't have a permit, what would happen?
Yeah, well, they were sort of making us panic and making us worry, saying that you must purchase a permit. But, I was young and arrogant. I was like, no, surely not. They're Mother Nature. They're the mountains.
Sure.
The permit to trek the mountains. And so we went, and, they were pretty forceful, saying you do, if the Pakistan army see you with no permit, they'll shoot you on sight. But we thought they were having us on, and we were like, no. And then they went to the effort of showing us how to pray, which was to get on your knees, put your thumbs behind your ears, and say Allah Rigby repeatedly, which then started worrying us. Me and Matt, my friend, were like, well, maybe we shouldn't be doing this. It's like, no, they're just trying to get some extra money out of us for a permit. There's no such thing. Let's keep pushing forward. And we went for it. Luckily, we didn't see any military, and we weren't trekking for long, a few days maximum anyway. But awesome experience.
So that sounds like a good grounding, but I think, in terms of projects, I guess some of the projects you've done, you need a good plan. I guess it's not, not on the back of a fag packet, not a little brief spreadsheet. You need, I bet, the devil in the detail. I bet it takes months to plan for a large project like some of the more latter ones you've done.
Yeah, it does for sure. The bigger ones I went on to do, they were a case of life and death. So I really did have to make sure I planned that fully. After my time in India, due to money being low, I moved over to Thailand. I was actually for the next 2.5 years working in Thailand as a master scuba diving instructor and Muay Thai fighter. And it was this time that I started to feel quite restless. I wanted to take on another big adventure. I only had about £200 in my bank, so it wasn't looking possible. But I was determined to make something happen, and that's when I got the world map out. I started looking at Mongolia because that seemed to capture my imagination quite a lot, because I was on the tourist route for a good while, but had rarely come across, well, at that point, had never come across anyone who had discussed Mongolia with me, who said that they've been or they plan on going. So I was fascinated because I knew it was off the tourist track. And that's when I started looking at adventures in Mongolia, and started doing research because I wanted to do a solo and unsupported trek. So I thought the best way to go about it is to ask someone who's done it before. So after all of my research, I couldn't find any evidence to suggest that anyone had completed a solo and unsupported crossing of Mongolia, but there was someone who attempted, and he was evacuated just after the halfway point. So I reached out to this guy. He turned out to be a Navy soldier, a desert explorer, so far more experienced than myself. And he helped. He gave me a bit of advice, but quite intimidating as well. He said, you need to watch out for the dry wells, the stagnant water, the grey wolves, the snow blizzards, the sandstorms.
No.
It just went on. So, I reevaluated the map and started to look at a more populated place, a more safer country. But then I thought, no, come on, I've got to try and make this happen. And that's when I was pretty much fixated on that particular idea, which was my first big world first expedition that I went ahead. But I had to give up my life in Thailand, sell all of my kit. I had to move back to the UK, back in with my parents, search for sponsorship and whatnot. And it was all really low budget again. My trailer that I had to pull across the country was built in a family friend's back garden. And so I was hoping that would last me the 1,500 miles across the Altai Mountains, Gobi Desert and steppe, which luckily it did. And then I was back in the UK for 6 months with extensive planning. I had to reach out to local logistics managers. I had to do my extensive worldwide research to actually make sure it was a record. Of course, that's not what I was in it for. I was in it for the adventure, but the record is would be the bonus, I thought.
Yeah.
And so it all went smoothly through the planning process. I had my fears, I had my doubts for sure, and I had a lot of negative feedback saying it's not possible to physically pull that weight, which was 120 kilograms across that country, due to lack of water, especially in the Gobi Desert. But I decided to go for it nevertheless, and luckily survived it.
That 120, like 18 stone, what's in that?
Yeah, so that had my water, which the water in some sections would need to be a full canister of 25 litres, which weighs 25 kilograms alone.
Yeah.
I carried over 5 weeks worth of ration packs for my meals, for my breakfast and for my dinner. I had camera equipment because I had no support team with me. I had no camera crew with me. It was completely alone. So I was self-filming. I had protective clothing and sleeping gear, cooking equipment. So it all added up to 18 stone, 120 kilograms. And the trailer didn't help. That was mild steel. So that was 40 kilograms on its own with no...
Was it? Oh, no.
Yeah. So that was heavy.
What about protection? I mean, you mentioned wolves and things. Did you have anything to protect yourself with?
I didn't take any gun or anything like that with me. I just had a small knife, but that was mainly, just for daily activities. But yeah, just me, walking poles, and I was hoping. I've always had big trust in humans, and so I thought, hopefully they will be a problem anyway. In which they were absolutely incredible and hospitable throughout Mongolia. But the wolves, I was told, they're not going to risk attacking something much bigger than them, and I would look extra large, especially with the trailer attached to the back of me.
Sure.
And so I was just kind of, some of it was a bit of luck, I suppose. The wolves didn't come close, they didn't attack. I did get blasted by a lot of sandstorms, thunderstorms, snow blizzards. I was told by locals that there are wolves hunting ahead and that I'd be eaten alive, which was pretty scary. But luckily that didn't happen.
Thanks for the motivational talk there from the locals.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the locals. I mean, were they feeding you on the way as well, so you didn't have to dip into your ration packs and things? Or?
Yeah. Sometimes I'd be walking across, I'd stumble upon a gur, or a yurt as we say, And they would call me in. They would give me some. Sometimes in the West, it would be Kazakh chai, which was my favorite. The Kazakh tea is so good. And they would give me like little snacks for on the go. I remember one situation when I was in the Gobi Desert, and I think it had been 8 days or 9 days since I'd seen another person. And I was going through a period when I had one ration pack at 6 a.m. and I had no snacks for a good few weeks. The only time I could get my next bite to eat was 12 to 14 hours later. So I lost 10 kilograms. I was really suffering. I was really hungry for a lot of it. But I came across a gur and they called me in and they gave me a bowl of homemade yogurt. And I went through it really fast, crazy fast. They sort of looked at me like, whoa, this guy is starving. And they gave me another bowl. And these bowls were big, they were big bowls. And I got through that just as fast. And I was onto my third big bowl of yogurt. I said I must push on. They gave me another bowl of yogurt to take away with me.
Wow.
And I was really starving at that point. The next day, I was really suffering with severe diarrhea, of course.
Yeah.
Didn't take too well, but yeah, that was one dark time. I remember being really hungry, so I wish I took more ration packs, I guess, more food with me for sure.
It's funny you've just said there that was a dark time. I mean, you mentioned you hadn't seen anybody for 8 days. I mean, I'm sure you've went through that, them emotions of loneliness and things. How do you cope with that, Ash?
Yeah, the loneliness was sometimes quite a big deal, but I remember I was much more worried about the loneliness before I went to Mongolia. And I think I actually mentally prepared myself because I expected it to be really daunting. But at times, I'd be walking through, it would be lonely, but I'd tell myself, the bad times haven't come to stay, they've come to pass. So all you need to do is just keep pushing forward and just absorb it. There's not many countries that you can go to and walk such big distance without seeing a human for 8 to 9 days. But there were other situations where I'd come across the likes of a gur or a small settlement, and the locals, they were so friendly. They were so hospitable and comforting that when it was my time to push on, I was back in the extreme elements, in the extreme environment. I was back into the same old smelly sleeping bag, eating out of a bag. It would be in my ration pack. And that's when it really started to hit me. I think, well, I could go another week or another 2 weeks before I meet locals that are that hospitable and invite me in again. So that's when I really had to battle on, and I just take it day by day, I would say, day by day, and eventually I will find my motivation again.
Sure. Was there anything you did to keep your spirits up? Anything a bit crazy? I mean, you couldn't have took much music or whatever, I imagine, or?
Well, yeah, I just took like a little MP3 device.
Yeah.
And so I'd listen to music, but it was 78 days and a lot of loneliness. So those tunes got pretty boring after a while. So that's a recommendation. Take more music.
Take more food and music.
More food and music, yes. But yeah, I think I saw my camera as a companion. As I said, I was self-filming. So at the really low times, I would get the camera out and I would just spill my heart out to the camera, talk all sorts. And often you can see me saying something and then laughing. There's no one there around me. I'm sort of just laughing at the joke I just made.
Well, that's a really good point. I mean, you've took a lot of footage there.
Yes.
I think we'll probably get into this later on, but isn't that the documentary you're going to be doing?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I filmed it was about 13, 14 hours worth of footage.
Was it?
Yeah, across the country. But there's only so much that I could film. There was a lot of me talking to the camera, of course, but there's also a lot of locals and a lot of the challenges that I faced along the way. But we're wanting to go back to Mongolia now and try to flesh out that footage more so we can really put together a really great story of the expedition across the country.
That sounds amazing. So is that going to be coming up this year, or?
I hope so. Yeah, we're trying to get it done before December, and we want to try and promote it at film festivals and whatnot. So we're looking to try and go out there this month. We've got a link up for Kickstarter. We're looking to raise £5,000 to make it all happen, in which anyone who does donate, they'll get it comes in different levels, but the first one being £10, they'll have their name up as a supporter and backer of the documentary. So there's only 13, 14 days left, so it's cutting it tight, but we think that if we can make it happen, then before the season changes, especially because it's still all right weather now in Mongolia, whereas if it's in a month or two, that's where the weather turns bad. To try and get back out there, get some footage, and for sure, create the documentary.
Yeah, that sounds like amazing footage to share. So I really hope that happens, and
Keep-
maybe some listeners might be able to jump on that. Is it Kickstarter? Well, actually, I'll put a link up. Actually, I'll put a
Okay,
link up on your show notes, and hopefully we can get a few listeners to help you with that.
appreciate that. Thank you very much.
So that was 2014, was that?
Yes, 2014.
So you've sat on that footage for quite a while now. You must be dying to get it out.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I think when I came back from Mongolia, I had pieces up on Discovery Channel, which spread across Canada, America, UK also, and I had about a 10-15 minute feature on Extreme Weather Channel on Channel 5. So I've had short clips up on TV, but never, a good 1 hour documentary. And so I'm looking to really try and get that moving forward. But then after that, I was sort of concentrating on my next expedition. I was in training. I had my UK theatre tour. I had appearances. Everything was going well. It opened up a potential career for me to pursue this career and continue doing what I'm doing. And I started focusing on my next expedition, which was the Madagascar Traverse from then.
That was another world's first, yeah?
That's right, yeah. So that was to walk from the most southern tip of Madagascar, called Cap Sainte Marie, to the most northern point called Cap d'Ambra. And I contacted a local logistics manager out there. He's pretty much the face of adventure. He's led the likes of National Geographic, Discovery, and he said that there's been people who have actually walked the length of the island before, following the coast. But he said there's a central mountainous ridge, a plateau that lies central east and covers almost the entire length of the island, and it's just asking to be walked. He said it's going to be a lot more extreme, it's going to be harsher, more difficult terrain, difficult weather, a lack of people, so the population won't be as populated, should I say. But I was pretty hooked from when he mentioned that. I was like, okay, I like this idea. So I make things even worse for myself and say, well, how about I summit the 8 highest mountains on the island whilst traversing that ridge? And Madagascar, a lot of people assume it's quite a small island because Africa dwarfs it. But in terms of landmass, it's 2.5 times the size of the UK. And it took 1,600 miles of land to cross from south to north. So it's a big island, the 4th largest island in the world, in fact.
You're right. People think of Madagascar, they think of obviously the cartoon. You think
That's
of how
it.
they think it's just small and a load of lemurs diving around singing "I like to move it, move it." But
Yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of indigenous wildlife there, isn't there? Just purely to Madagascar.
there is. They say there's 80% of all plant life and wildlife are found nowhere else in the world. So it makes it really unique. And the likes of lemurs, they're endemic to Madagascar, found nowhere else in the world in the wild. And there's over 100 different species. And it's just crazy the amount of things you do come across. And I was walking with a local Malagasy for help with translation, because I was also self-filming a documentary with that one. And there was constantly, he was pointing out different plant life and wildlife, saying sometimes not only is it endemic to Madagascar, but sometimes it's even endemic to that particular national park that we're trekking through, found nowhere else in Madagascar. So it's a very unique country for sure.
Yeah, you mentioned, I think briefly. So what have we got in Madagascar? You've got deserts, you've got
Yeah,
jungles, mountains.
that's it. You've got your tropical dry forest, your tropical rainforest, your desert, your mountains, your savanna. So it's completely diverse, and it actually made for such an interesting trek because I was just coming across all sorts of wildlife, all sorts of terrain. It was never the same. It was always changing. And with Madagascar, it was always challenging. Every day there was something new thrown at me, whether that be lack of water, whether that be marshland, whether that be the thickness of the jungle, whether that be absolutely everything along the way. It was a really tough challenge for sure. And the mountains were sometimes, we couldn't get to the peaks of the mountains. And one time we had to turn around and walk 3 days back on ourselves to try and find a different way up to one particular peak, which was crucifying to say the least.
I can well imagine that. So what sort of training did you do for those mountains?
So what training?
Yeah,
It's not technical climbing. So the highest
right.
peak is just over 2,800 meters. But what's so tough about these mountains is the locals rarely go up there. They don't go to the summits. It's too cold for them. And they also say that there's bad spirits on top, which keeps them from summiting them. And so that means
Right.
there's no tracks for the majority. The highest on the island, there's a small track. People have summited the highest mountain, but the rest of them are just, people don't, especially foreigners, they don't travel to Madagascar to summit the fifth highest mountain, for example. So that is just trackless. So you are literally machete in hand, opening up a path for, maybe a week trying to get to the top, in which even at the top, there's no view because it's still covered in jungle. So they're really tough mountains for sure.
And the only way to get from the length, would it be you'd have to go over those mountains, or was that a choice? Rather than go around, you had to go over, or?
That was actually a choice that was added on. You can go around. Yeah, that's what I
Don't
said.
do it by half, sir.
Yeah, that's what I said. I actually made it difficult for myself, more challenging, saying, okay, while summiting the mountainous ridge, which is tough enough, why don't I summit the eight highest mountains? So I did make it a lot tougher for sure. But once I had said that, that's what I was sticking to, and I had to get to those summits.
Has anybody done that? Had anybody summited those mountains before you did?
No, not walking the length through the
Uh,
mountainous ridge. Apparently, that's a world first. There's no evidence to suggest that anyone's ever done that. Even the local Malagasy, there's been local
yeah,
Malagasy who's walked the length of the island, but not that mountainous ridge. It's quite a hidden plateau, and I didn't even know about a mountainous ridge of Madagascar, but it does lie the length of the island. And even the locals thought it was bonkers. Even they said it's
sure,
crazy.
it is.
Yeah.
So, we spoke about wolves earlier on, but in Madagascar, I mean, you must have seen lots of things that could, attack you, eat you, chop you up, bite you.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, we had a lot of river crossings and
Oh,
Madagascar.
crocodiles.
Yeah, a lot of
Oh,
Nile
man.
crocodiles, the
Oh,
biggest, baddest crocs. And just as I
sure.
started out from my trek, about 2, 3 weeks in, that's when the crocodiles wake up from 7 months in hibernation. And of
Right.
course, they're pretty hungry. And I had a lot of rivers to cross. Some sections, we had to build a raft using natural resources, so just chopping up your bamboo and your bamboo leaves, constructing a raft, getting all the equipment on, sending that across, and then sending our bodies across with it also. But yeah, it wasn't just that. The biggest threat was probably the mosquitoes, the diseases out there. I contracted the deadliest strain of malaria and was pretty much a couple of hours from slipping into a coma.
Wow, really?
Yeah, it was rather nasty. Made
Yeah.
it to a small village called Tadaso, which luckily that had local transport, and I believed I was suffering with a bit of heat exhaustion, which I had suffered with in the Gobi Desert on my Mongolia trek. I almost died, in fact, in the Gobi Desert with heat stroke. But it was the same signs and the same symptoms. So I was like, well, I just need to drink lots of water, get some sugar down me, get some salt. And I did. And 4 days later, I was much worse. I was in a lot of pain. So I realized, well, this isn't right. This definitely isn't heat exhaustion.
Yeah.
So I told my guide, we got the local transport that was there, which is just a car off road, just small dirt tracks. And we took a 3-hour trip to the nearest city, which was Fianarantsoa. And we arrived at a hotel in which the doctor came straight out to see me. I was pretty much conked out on the bed, collapsed. My temperature was really high. My blood pressure was awful. She took my blood and she came back within a minute, saying that I've got the deadliest strain of malaria and it usually kills you within 24 hours. I've been hanging in there for 4 or 5 days. She needed to act there and then. So luckily, I still don't know how, but I was hanging on in there, and the doctor worked her magic, and I was able to eradicate malaria completely out of my system. It took 7 to 8 painful days, diarrhea, vomiting, delirious. I went from strong and capable to not even being able to pick up a glass of water, for example. So she managed to clear that, and 8 days later, I was able to push on back to Talasu, back to the small village, And straight away I had the second highest mountain in Madagascar to attempt. So that got me strong and fit again.
Wow. So, planning for things like this, you must have had the anti-malarials, the doxycycline, is it? Or,
That's
stuff
it,
like.
yeah,
So,
doxycycline.
so you still took that, but you still contracted it?
Yeah, I was on doxycycline, so you take a pill every morning.
Yeah.
But one morning, me and my guide, we had eel for breakfast at this small village, a very local small village. And I remember them saying, "Stay away from the hut." This was translated to me. They were speaking Malagasy to my guide, but they were pretty much telling us to stay away from the hut because there's small fleas. What they were trying to say is they still have the bubonic plague, which is crazy. I was warned by my logistics manager that there's still small bouts of bubonic plague in small settlements in Madagascar, mainly down south. And so I remember we just we weren't then thinking of the food we were eating for breakfast. We just grabbed anything we could get. The locals offered us an eel, so we took this eel far away from the hut to cook it up to eat it. But that eel that we were actually eating was gave us a bit of food poisoning or gave us a dodgy stomach. So then both of us, the local included, started suffering with pretty bad diarrhea.
Oh,
So
right.
now when
Okay.
I'm on these doxycycline pills, I believe
Sure.
that the diarrhea would have just washed the doxycycline and all the chemicals inside to eradicate malaria out of my system there and then. And it was for a few days. So I think that's when malaria was able to get a hold of my system. But I also believe
Yeah.
that's why maybe I lasted 5 days, because maybe there was still small bouts of doxycycline still in my system, keeping me alive.
Sure. Wow.
So it worked out quite. It was quite intense. It was scary. Don't get me wrong, but out of anywhere that I could have been, I got it in the best place. If I was going to contract malaria, if I caught it in the mountains up north, we're talking at least a week or two to get to the nearest small settlement. And even the small
Sure.
settlement, you've still got to walk a few days. There's no transport. So I actually got it in the right place at the right time in order to survive it. So I was very lucky.
Yeah. Is there any lasting effects at all?
There's not, no, luckily with that. But also, which is gutting, is even if you've had it, it's not like chickenpox, for example. You're not immune to it. You can still get it again. So I was
Yeah,
hoping,
you kind
yes,
of go dancing around the
I've had it.
mosquitoes
I'll
now.
never get it again. But that's not the case. But I'm glad it was also the deadly strain. You've got four strains of malaria. The three lower ones aren't as deadly. They can still kill you, but aren't as deadly. But what they do is remain dormant in your system.
All right.
It's only the deadliest strain that you're able to completely eradicate out of your system.
So how long was that? Was the Madagascar trip in length? Like, how many days did that take?
That was 155 days. So that was a long one. 5 months.
Yeah. And after you contract malaria, did you not feel like quitting, or how
No,
did you kick on from there?
yeah, I got malaria about a month into my expedition, so I wasn't even halfway. I was about quarter, if that. But when I made it to Fianarantsoa, the city, I was on the phone to my parents, and my family were worried. They said it's not the
Sure.
cold. You've not got a fever, you've got malaria. You need to get yourself home. It's the biggest killer in human history. And obviously that gets you worrying. But at the same time, I thought I'm in safe hands. These guys out here in Madagascar, they deal with it so many times per day. The doctors are used to it. And luckily, I was in Madagascar. The doctor can just find it. And they just know it's malaria and can act fast. So I was in good hands, and I believed that this doctor could help me to recover, and I'd be able to push on. It was really difficult because there was a language barrier. So again, I had to have my local guide with me to be able to translate. So I've got malaria. She's talking about deadliest disease, but I can't even ask her, will I survive, because she doesn't understand. So yeah, that makes it awkward. That makes it difficult. But I was in the right hands, and I believed that if she can recover me, I will definitely pluck up the courage and strength to be able to continue.
You mentioned a bit about the different dialects. There's many different dialects, though, isn't there, in Madagascar?
That's it. There's over 18 different dialects.
Is there? Wow.
Yeah, so it was funny seeing my guide struggle now and again to communicate with the locals.
Yeah. Uh-huh. So did you have many guides across those 155 days then?
Yes, I had one for the southern section, He had never been south before, but he came down south anyway.
Well picked. Was he cheap?
That's it. Yeah, that's it. So he was actually part of the adventure with me. You know, it was a real adventure. He
Yeah.
never explored the southern section, and then I had a different guide for the middle section, and then that guide went home, and then I had a guide for the northern section to trek the mountains up north with.
So what was your favourite section?
Oh,
Because obviously, as you said, there's many things. There's dry forest. There's
yeah,
mountains.
that's it. And I tell you what,
Uh,
it's completely different because
yeah.
I was held back for 2 weeks with malaria. And due to me being held back by 2 weeks, that means that I would now hit the north section in the cyclone season.
Oh no.
Yeah, so that's why I was laughing, saying it was just challenge in Madagascar. And so all the rivers were now in full flow, hence the raft building.
Yeah.
And it was just wet, rainy, slippery. The tracks were overgrown. If someone's going to climb, especially the highest mountain, they always climb it in the summer. But everything's so fast grown in the jungles, in the forests, that all the tracks were now completely covered up. But I did like that challenge. It was a different challenge to down south where we had to drink partially filtered salt water, and it was 40 plus degrees Celsius. It was dry. It was humid as well. And then you've got you could be in a completely different country up north. You know, you've got jungle, you're high in the mountains, you're cold. It's so different challenges completely. So in terms of what I'd prefer, maybe the north. Maybe the north was tougher. I think that's why I enjoyed that. You know, and there was so many leeches as well, so you had to really stay on form, stay alert. Like some people would say, "Oh, walk, wouldn't you get bored just walking every day?" But it's not more like a walk. I call it surviving. You know, you are literally surviving everything you have. I was held up by the military at gunpoint down south, which was a fairly scary experience. He was drunk, and then I had a local civilian try to fight me. But that was just in one small village. All the rest of the locals, you know, pretty much shouted at this officer and the local, because they were all really friendly, hospitable, and told them to do on pretty much. But that lasted for about 25 minutes. So sometimes it was the people, sometimes it was the wildlife, sometimes it was the weather or the terrain. So it's that was just the thrill and excitement of it all. I think for me is there's just an abundance of stories when it comes to Madagascar.
No wonder you're the seventh coolest person in Wales, Ash. That sounds amazing. So, did you take footage? Obviously, you've done the Mongolia footage. Did you do the same in Madagascar? Were you
I did,
GoPro and all that kind of stuff?
I got better footage, I'd say, in Madagascar.
Did you?
Just because I was more prepared this time. After Mongolia, I came back and I realised, you know, bloody hell, I like to talk to the camera a lot, but that's not what people want to see. They don't want to see you talking to the camera all the time. So with Madagascar, you know, I was filming a lot to do with the locals. I was filming the survival, eating and living off the land. You know, we would collect sugarcane, mangoes, coconut. We would hunt now and again. And so all of this is part of the footage. Obviously, some were really difficult to film. But then I had a pro photographer join me for the northern section. And she was able to get some really good photos and some really good footage as well. So I must have gathered over 14 hours of footage with Madagascar.
Wow. So just make sure that's backed up, mind. All right.
Yeah, that's it.
So obviously, you know, hopefully the Mongolian documentary will take off, and then obviously you can do a sequel.
That's it. Yeah, it leaves it open for Madagascar. Then I hope. Yeah, but we're still trying nevertheless with Madagascar at the same time as Mongolia.
Great stuff. Well, actually, we're going to have to wrap it up. But is there anything else you want to get out there? I know we're going to do the show notes. We're going to put a link up to your Kickstarter. I think your ashdykes.com.
Yes, if my website, but maybe my Facebook. That's where I send more updates. It's actually Ash-Dykes, my Facebook page. And so I will keep everyone posted. And of course, I have my next expedition to announce, which will probably be in the next few months, which will be another big project.
World's first?
Potentially a world first. Need to do more research, but it's looking like it so far.
Going for the hat trick.
Go for the hat trick, yeah.
Oh, that's it. And you're not going to give any little inklings where it's at, no? All top secret.
I would love to, but I'm not going to.
Well, we'll watch this space.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Amazing. Well, Ash, really enjoyed speaking with you, and best of luck going forward.
Much appreciated, Ian. Good to chat to you also. Thanks for having me.
That was Ash Dykes. As you could hear, he doesn't do things by half. What an inspiration. I love the way Ash just skirted over some of the challenges he'd faced, crocodile-infested rivers, crazy drunk policemen, and of course, he didn't quit after he contracted the deadliest strain of malaria. No wonder he's ahead of Gareth Bale in the cool Welshmen list, Gareth's number 10. As you heard, Ash has a Kickstarter campaign. As of today, it's September 6th. There are only 13 days left on this campaign, and Ash needs 5k to make the project go ahead. Let's see if we can help Ash share his adventure with us all on the big screen. He's a really genuine guy. He gives it his all, so let's see if we can do that too. As usual, head over to industryangel.com. The link is there. Let me know if you or your company can support Ash, and I'm sure we can give you an acknowledgement. So until next time, I'm Ian Farrer. This is the Industry Angel, and thanks for listening.